this afternoon, just to cut through some of the slogans and the jargon and the confusion that you may have had so far during this election campaign. Professor John Warhurst is going to analyse the elections so far. Please welcome him up. This is Professor John Warhurst.
Thanks very much, Joe. I hope I don't add to the confusion. What I thought I would do would be to just perhaps take a slightly different tack and to make some more general comments, which may flow back into question time. I've got huge admiration for people who stand for public office and who act in public office, and it's great to see the speakers here today, as well as Senator Humphries, and thanks to him for letting me go first. Because my daughter called, and you know what happens when daughters call, you go. I suppose what I'd say first is that all of what we've heard, I suppose, so far has been about rational discussion of issues. And that's in one sense how it should be, but given what Joe said earlier about the Canberra citizens who reacted in sort of strange ways to, is there an election, do I care, or whatever, sometimes there's a bit of a disconnect, I think, between the sort of discussion which we all appreciate as aficionados of public affairs and politics and our interests, and maybe a very large section of the Canberra community. And the task, I suppose, for the three speakers and those who are standing for the election with them is to cut through and to reach those people somehow. And I guess if I knew the answer and how to do that, I'd be in great demand with political parties and candidates. I suppose what I'm trying to say is that I think elections are partly about a general mood which is almost intangible, and partly about rational calculation of the issues at stake. And I think there is a general mood around Australian politics at the moment, and it is a disengagement from politics, I think. Perhaps a scepticism about what governments can do, and I think all candidates have to break through that disconnect. I think there's no getting away from the fact that incumbent governments have got a very poor record in Australia over the last few years, and by the luck of the draw, or the fact that Labor have been in office, they have been losing elections over the last few years, and I think that's also a sort of an intangible mood issue. Is the ACT sort of isolated from the rest of the Australian community, or are there general concerns which are going to play a part in deciding this particular ACT election? There was some mention of that in the speeches, and one of the issues perhaps is whether that mood is changing slightly. The recent state budgets in other places, I mean, I think no one knows whether that has changed the mood of the general Australian population as far as elections are concerned. The other thing is that we barely heard about the national political leaders. One or two mentions, I suppose. I don't think Julia Gillard's name has been mentioned so far today, and Tony Abbott's name was only very briefly mentioned. Is that going to make a difference? Is what people think of the national political leaders going to flow into the results of the ACT election? I mean, these are factors more or less beyond the control of ACT candidates and parties. If there is some mood out there in the general public, then the parties and candidates have really got to wear that mood and try and play it to their advantage. The other thing we haven't heard much about are the personalities in the ACT campaign, and that's perhaps out of respect for one another, and also the fact that that's the way today's lunch has been structured. But undoubtedly, Katie Gallagher and Zed Seselja are going to be in people's minds when they vote. in terms of what they think of the job that the current Chief Minister is doing and what they think the Leader of the Opposition would be like in government. I mean, I think they are issues that will, in a close-run election, and I should say I think it's going to be very close, so that these are issues which I wouldn't expect the speakers here to comment on. They may wish to, but yeah, the alternative candidates for the top job, the strengths and weaknesses of the teams that have been assembled around those three leaders. I suppose particularly the two leaders. What do people think of the ACT ministers as a group, and what do they think of the opposition shadow ministers as a group? I mean, these are things that are going to get in the way of people's final decision, as much as their judgment about the hospital or the health system or transport or rates. I think the thing about all of those issues, like hospitals and health and education, is that it's a very random impact on the community. I think most people's experience of the health system may in fact be whether they've been to the Canberra hospital in the last 12 months or whether a relative of theirs has been. Do they have a child or a grandchild in the non-government education system or the government education system, and so on. I think the percentage of people in the community who study the budget papers and really know the ins and outs of particular policy issues is pretty small, and that most people, maybe it's the tennis court they're playing on or something like that really bites home. The other thing we haven't heard about is the candidates. In a very close-run election, the ability of the candidates, other than the very well-known ones, to make an impact will be important. Is there going to be someone on the Labor, Green or Liberal side who can really make an impact in one of those three electorates, other than the people we know well, who can pull in some extra votes because of their profile or their energetic campaigning, the quality of the leaflets they're sticking in people's letterboxes, or the foot leather that they're wearing out as they were. I was on the first floor of commercial premises in Braddon last week, and two candidates knocked on the door and introduced themselves. I won't say who they were from. I happen to know them. And that struck me that we have to be grateful for the effort that all of those candidates are going into, often putting off their family lives, some of them taking leave from their jobs, even perhaps when realistically they haven't got the greatest chance of getting elected. So we are in the middle of a great democracy, where a lot of people are putting in a lot of effort to bring the issues to us as citizens, and all of them have the best interests of the Canberra community in mind. So I suppose my point would be that whatever you've heard today and whatever you're inclined to think about the issues, big issues of the day, that there will be a lot of other factors which I think will play a part. And if the opinion polls are right, and this is a neck-and-neck election, and perhaps you could throw in the electoral system, which means you probably need a smidgen of good luck as well, I reckon. If it's going to be down to the last seat out of 17, then you know, the way the preference flows, the candidates will know better than me that. But yeah, ultimately that last seat could be in the balance for a few weeks perhaps, and that might depend on, you know, the energetic candidate who really knocked on those extra 100 homes, or somehow or another got through to you as voters, which will ultimately make the difference. So I hope that's added a little bit of value to the broader discussion, because I think we all should be grateful for the democratic experience that we're going through at the moment. I've got no sympathy for people who turn off from the political system. Great admiration for those who stand. Great admiration for those who will be handing out. Do we do that in ACT elections? We don't. I won't say that then. Well, great admiration for all those people who are behind the scenes anyway, who must be playing a part for not only the three parties that we've heard from today, but the minor parties and some of the independents. Hundreds and hundreds of people, thousands and thousands probably, who are really making an effort over these couple of months to give us a choice. So thank you very much.
Professor John Warhurst for helping us all to understand it. And actually we have one of the new faces who is a candidate here today. Hello, Mark Singham, who is over at this table here. Do you want to stand up and let everybody see your face?
Yeah.
And perhaps, of course, we do have a lot of questions for the faces that we know very well, but you will have some questions for the candidates that perhaps you don't know so well. So I encourage you to have a chance to speak to them. I know the other day on the radio program I got a call from someone saying they were very interested in hearing more about what the other candidates have to offer in this election. And just as a side note, on 666 very shortly in the coming weeks we will be taking an opportunity to get to meet some of those lesser known candidates as well. And I do have another announcement for you. The Fred Hollows organisation, they're in their 20th anniversary, aren't they? I think it's 20 years since the Fred Hollows Foundation started. Gabby Hollows is taken up the mantle where her husband left off, and they're just doing some tremendous work, not only in the area of eye health overseas, but also in Indigenous health right here in Australia, which may surprise some of you, and not just Indigenous eye health either, it's Indigenous health in Australia. They do some tremendous work, and they have a fundraising dinner in November, on the 9th of November at the Hellenic Club. So if you would like to see Judy, who gave us our question about the tennis courts, and get involved in that fundraising dinner, it's really a very worthwhile organisation to support. Now, we are honoured by the presence of Senator Gary Humphries, who's going to be having a chat to us about what it takes to be a Chief Minister in the ACT. We're a very political town. I think it's probably quite tough to be a Chief Minister in the ACT.